Hi all, Rick here. So part of Starfleet's mandate is to explore strange new worlds, and as part of this they routinely survey planetary systems and make notes of promising planets that might be colonizable. The perfect choice for most Federation species is an M-class world, which means a near Earth-like atmosphere that can support humanoid life without terraforming or much intervention. Generally, there also has to be no native sentient inhabitants. If there is, then negotiations could begin if a colony was needed, but if those inhabitants are pre-warp and unaware of the greater galactic community, then it falls under the protection of the Prime Directive, so long as it's within Federation territory. But such golden worlds are not the only choices, as the Federation has ample practice with both terraforming and constructing insulated environments for habitation. Terraforming is preferable, but also not as common as you may think, considering that changing a planet to suit humanoid life may unbalance it for any native species there, even if they are as simple as microbes. This is why, despite having such technology available, it is seldom used. Class L planets, for example, are close to the desired Class M and can support humanoid life in the short term, but lack some vital resource for long-term survival. However, the fact that they are often supporting entire ecosystems of flora and sometimes fauna suited to their atmospheres means that intensive alterations would more likely ruin that planet altogether. Naturally, this is something the Federation wishes to avoid, the whole encountering new life part of their goals. So, besides the thriving M-class worlds that require little alteration, this is why the Federation colonies tend to be small enclaves or built around spaceports, either in habitation domes or at the least supported by technology. Local climate control, gravity plating, force field fences, or simple literal walled towns are all ways of creating a curated biome that leaves as little impact on the native planet as possible. Within the United Federation of Planets, colonies are established for a variety of reasons, but each has numerous barriers of red tape around the settlement. Numerous surveys, studies, and experiments need to be carried out by Starfleet to ascertain the viability and impact of settling the world. Then UFP law has to be taken into consideration, diplomatic issues if applicable, and so on, until the colony is given the green light to begin. It should be noted that colonies are not the same as smaller outposts. Such outposts may be there to study unique phenomena, wildlife, or environments present in a system or planet, and tend to be temporary, and are therefore subject to different mandates. Military sites, too, are a different beast altogether, and commonly not expected to be completely self-sufficient. Mining, or other such resource gathering, is also a large motivator for colonisation, with such industry often pioneering the way alongside any settlement efforts. But when a world is deemed suitable for an actual colony, then Starfleet switches from survey into settlement mode and begins transferring needed components, supplies, colonists, structures, and such to the world. Often the actual colonies are established around the initial survey outposts, as these often already have made a start on being self-sufficient as part of the experimentation and featured habitats in some form. Starbases too are colony worlds, but not all colony worlds are starbases. The Starbase is a designation given to a colony or outpost that is primarily for the use of Starfleet and supported extensively by them. Starbases may have thriving civilian infrastructure around them and benefit much from the repeated Starfleet involvement, but they can never be truly independent because of their level of involvement, nor were they designed as such. A Federation governor or some overseer, not necessarily someone from Starfleet, is often appointed the leader of colonisation efforts and is responsible for managing the development of the projects. The UFP operates its own colonial department, which has regulations to follow on the appointment of such individuals, as well as a wide pool of talent from which to assign roles in the project. Among the numbers are many expected careers: xenobiologists, agriculture experts, horticulturalists, construction crews and administrators. On Class M planets, settlement is easy, with the biggest hurdle being the initial red tape, as they often have their own life forms on which the colonists' impact needs to be measured. But once that is all cleared up, a colony can be established with the new inhabitants still needing to adapt to their environment and shape it to support them. The ultimate goal of most worlds like this is to make them into fully functional worlds capable of operating independently of any outside resources, which takes years. Every step is an exercise in patience, as even the introduction of new crops and animals, common to the settlers, needs to be carefully measured so as not to introduce something destructive to the existing ecosystem. This is another reason why colonists tend to prioritise seeking out the edible and native resources of a planet, as these have far less likelihood of some invasive contamination ruining the planet than importing crops. For this reason, most of the earliest projects are to establish agriculture and sustainable farmland. Of course, we have replicators, but power generation is not infinite, especially on fledgling colony worlds. However, as these considerations are eventually managed, the colonies tend to explode in population and scale rather rapidly as new settlers arrive and flourish. Once they reach this state, a colony may even petition to go independent of the Federation. In fact, some are even established by the UFP with this in mind, as the ultimate goal. On planets that are not ideal, there tends to be less pre-existing lifeforms to worry about. This means that the establishing of colony sites can often be done with a larger footprint and more technology involved. However, in these locations, venturing beyond the colony site is more dangerous, as the natural biomes may not be as supportive of humanoid life. The level of technology at play in keeping these locations habitable is much higher than settling an M-class world, but the pace is faster. Agriculture is not always tenable on such worlds, but if it is, then such produce may need to be imported to seed the soil first. However, considering the environment was less than ideal to begin with, such projects are often in a far more delicate balance than worlds that were completely suitable to begin with. Because of this, such colonies tend to never really shake their reliance on outside support, often requiring something to keep them going. Perhaps they still need to import food reserves, maybe components and power supplies. It's not impossible for such a world to become self-sufficient, but even if they do, it usually involves some level of trade and reliance on shipments beyond their borders. Then there are the planets that are marked for terraforming. These worlds need to have no present lifeforms at all. Or if there is, then it has to be able to tolerate the new environment that the Federation wishes to create. Terraforming can take a while to do, and is a resource-intensive investment for Starfleet, so it's also not a common choice for settling worlds. In fact, the Federation is far more likely to pick the less arduous task of making a space station or orbital starbase instead of terraforming the world, or perhaps making such an installation while the planet below is gradually modified. Terraforming can be done with something like a Genesis device, but these are also treated with great consideration, as the Genesis Matrix Unleashed has the potential to be highly variable, somewhat unpredictable, and will definitely destroy any life that gets caught up in its effect. I plan on doing a separate video covering Star Trek's terraforming at some point, so I'm not going into it all here. But suffice to say, terraforming is only really ever done for 3 reasons. Those are: to test out terraforming technology, to create a localized and temporary environment to cultivate something in demand, or to actually convert a planetoid of such importance that no other choice will do. But Once a colony is established, in any of these ways, it is free to self-govern. Often, those who led the initial setup programs are appointed to seats in the emerging government, and a colony is free to seek its own deals and trades so long as it abides by Federation law. By the time this happens, usually any problems will have presented themselves by now. Starfleet's visits become less frequent as the UFP begins to take its hands off the reins and the settled world truly becomes its own entity. Of course, that is the intended effect, and more often than not, it pans out that way. As mentioned earlier, Starbases tend to be shortlisted for development and support thanks to the continued visits from Starfleet, but colonies have greater freedom in how they govern. This can go wrong, however, as with less oversight, nefarious acts can happen or runaway regimes take hold, and this can be exacerbated should the colony previously have cut ties with the Federation entirely. Governor Kodos of Tarsus IV is an example, where a famine caused him to enact a eugenics-based mass execution in an attempt to save the other half of the colony from starving. Or the failed colony of Tokana, Tasha Yar's home planet. Nimbus 3's all but abandoned status, Omicron Theta's raising at the spindles of the crystalline entity, and so on. There are many things that can cause a colony to fail, which will be the subject of the next video in this little series I'm working on. So until the next one, I've been Rick. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.